A homeless mother sat freezing on a subway floor, holding her daughter, when a billionaire handed her something impossible, his unlimited credit card. She had 24 hours to spend whatever she wanted. No catch. No limits. No one watching. What would you do with a billionaire's money if you had nothing? What she did next will restore your faith in humanity. Welcome to the story room. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. Let me tell you about a man who had everything except the one thing that mattered most. His name was Daniel Wright, and at 41 years old, he'd built an empire. Not just any empire, but one of the most successful tech companies in Chicago. Wright Digital Solutions was worth billions, with offices in 12 countries and software running on millions of devices worldwide. Daniel lived in a glass penthouse that overlooked Lake Michigan, where the sunrise painted the water gold every morning. He owned cars he barely drove, art he never really looked at, and a watch that cost more than most people's yearly salary. But here's the thing about Daniel. He was lonely in a way that money couldn't fix. And he was angry, though he'd never admit it. His father, Robert Wright, had died 3 years earlier, leaving behind more than just wealth. He'd left behind a philosophy that Daniel carried like a stone in his chest. "Son," his father used to say, his voice cold and certain, "never trust the poor. Give them a chance, and they'll take everything you have. It's not their fault. Desperation turns good people into thieves. Protect yourself first, always." Daniel had believed this for as long as he could remember. Every donation he made went through lawyers. Every act of kindness had a tax benefit attached. He never once looked into the eyes of someone struggling and simply helped, not without conditions, not without protecting himself, not without keeping his distance. That December morning started like any other. Daniel was rushing through Union Station, late for a meeting with investors from Silicon Valley. His assistant, Jennifer, was practically jogging to keep up with him, rattling off his schedule like a drill sergeant. His Italian leather shoes clicked against the marble floor. His cashmere coat probably cost more than the average person's monthly rent. His mind was racing with numbers, contracts, acquisitions, all the things that filled his days but left his nights empty. And then he saw her. She was sitting against the wall near the entrance to the Blue Line, and something about her made Daniel's feet stop moving. A woman, maybe in her early 30s, with exhaustion written across her face like a language everyone could read, but nobody wanted to translate. In her lap, wrapped in a donated jacket that had seen better days, was a little girl, maybe 7 years old, fast asleep despite the noise and cold and chaos of the station. The woman's arms were wrapped around that child like she was the only thing worth protecting in the entire world. Next to them was a piece of cardboard with words written in black marker. "Single mom. Lost everything. Anything helps. God bless." Daniel had seen hundreds of people like this. Chicago was full of them. This shouldn't have been different. This shouldn't have stopped him in his tracks. But something in the way this woman held her daughter, something in her eyes when she looked up at him, cut through all his defenses like a knife through paper. There was no performance there. No rehearsed desperation. Just pure, bone-deep exhaustion. The kind that settles into your soul after months of carrying weight that should break a person, but somehow doesn't. "Mr. Wright, we're going to be late," Jennifer whispered urgently behind him. "The investors are already in the conference room." "Wait here," Daniel heard himself say, his voice sounding strange to his own ears. He walked toward the woman slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last. When he got close enough, she looked up and the first thing she said was, "I'm sorry. We're not bothering anyone. We can move if we need to." She was apologizing for existing. That hit Daniel harder than any business failure ever had. Harder than losing his father. Harder than anything he'd felt in years. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice softer than he'd intended. The woman blinked, surprised that someone in a coat that expensive would bother asking. "Rachel," she said quietly. "Rachel Torres. And this is my daughter, Lily. How long have you been out here, Rachel?" Shame crossed her face like a shadow. 6 months. We were staying with my cousin until October, but she couldn't afford to keep us anymore. We've been bouncing between here and the shelter on Roosevelt when they have space. 6 months. A 7-year-old child had been sleeping on these cold floors for 6 months while thousands of people walked past every single day, including him. Mr. Wright, please. Jennifer tried again, her voice tight with stress. Daniel raised his hand without looking back, silencing her. His father's voice was screaming in his head. She'll take advantage of you. The desperate always do. Walk away. Protect yourself. But another voice, quieter and more fragile, whispered something different. What if he was wrong? Daniel reached into his coat and pulled out his wallet. Rachel's eyes widened slightly, probably expecting a few dollars. Maybe 20 if she was lucky. Maybe 50 if the universe decided to be generous for once. Instead, Daniel pulled out a black credit card. Platinum edges. No spending limit. No restrictions. Just pure, unrestricted access to more money than most people would see in their lifetime. He held it out between them like a bridge between two different worlds. Take it, he said. Rachel stared at the card like he'd just offered her something dangerous. I don't understand. It's yours for 24 hours, Daniel explained, his heart pounding in a way it hadn't during any business deal. Buy whatever you want. No limits. No questions. No conditions. Rachel's hands started shaking. Sir, this has to be some kind of joke. People don't just hand out credit cards to strangers, especially not to people like me. I want to test something, Daniel said, and for the first time in years, he spoke the complete truth. My father taught me that people with nothing will take everything if you give them the chance. I want to see if he was right. I want to see what someone does when they suddenly have access to everything. He pressed the card into her palm. Her fingers were ice cold and rough from exposure. Why me? Rachel whispered, tears filling eyes that looked like they'd cried themselves empty months ago. Daniel looked at Lily, sleeping peacefully despite everything. Despite the cold. Despite the hunger. Despite having absolutely nothing stable in her entire world. He thought about his own childhood. Private schools and summer camps in Colorado, and every need met before he could even name it. This child had nothing except a mother who refused to let go. Because I'm tired of assumptions, Daniel said quietly. Because I want to believe there's still something good left in this world. Prove my father right or prove him wrong. Either way, I'll finally know the truth. Rachel closed her fingers around the card slowly, like someone touching fire for the first time. 24 hours, Daniel repeated, standing up. Spend whatever you want. There's no pin. Just sign your name. I'll come back here tomorrow morning, same time, same place. Jennifer looked like she might faint. Mr. Wright, this is incredibly reckless. We should at least set some parameters. No parameters, Daniel said firmly, his eyes still on Rachel. No protection. Just trust. The word felt strange in his mouth. Trust. He'd spent his entire adult life avoiding it like a disease. As he walked away, his father's voice whispered warnings. She'll drain your account. She'll disappear. You're a fool. But that other voice whispered back. What if she doesn't? Daniel didn't sleep that night. Not even for a minute. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse, staring out at Chicago's skyline, at the millions of lights twinkling in the darkness, wondering which one of those lights, if any, was shining on Rachel and Lily. Were they warm? Were they safe? Had he just made the biggest mistake of his life? He'd canceled everything. The investor meeting. 3 conference calls. A dinner with potential clients. Jennifer had looked at him like he'd lost his mind, but she'd handled it. That's what he paid her for. Now, alone in his apartment that felt more like a museum than a home, Daniel pulled out his phone and opened his banking app. The credit card he'd given Rachel was linked to his personal account. He could track every transaction in real time. Every purchase. Every choice she made. For hours, nothing happened. Midnight came and went. 1 in the morning. 2. 3. Still nothing. Why wasn't she spending? Was she afraid it was a trap? Did she think the card wouldn't work? Or was she planning something bigger, waiting for stores to open so she could maximize every possible dollar? At 6:30 in the morning, his phone finally buzzed. Transaction, $41.22. Location, 24-hour Walgreens, downtown Chicago. Daniel's heart jumped into his throat. He clicked for details, but the app only showed the amount and location. Not what she'd bought. Just numbers. Then another notification. Transaction, $58.47. Location, Target, State Street. Then another. Transaction, $3.15. Location, McDonald's, Union Station. His chest felt tight. Not with anger, but with something stranger. Something he couldn't quite name. Anticipation, maybe. Or hope. Or fear that his father had been right all along. But these weren't the transactions of someone drunk on sudden wealth. These weren't the purchases of someone losing control. These were careful, modest. These were the choices of someone desperately practical. By 8:30, Daniel couldn't wait anymore. He called his driver, then immediately called him back and canceled. He needed to walk. He needed to feel the December air on his face. He needed to remember what the city actually felt like when you weren't insulated by wealth and power and glass walls. He walked the 2 miles to Union Station, his breath making clouds in the cold air. His mind was racing faster than his feet. What would he find? Would Rachel even be there? Would she have run, taken everything she could, and disappeared into the city? When he reached the Blue Line entrance, Rachel was exactly where he'd left her. But everything else had changed. Lily was awake now, sitting beside her mother, wearing a brand new winter coat. Bright red with a hood. Her hair had been brushed and pulled back with a small clip that had a flower on it. She was clutching a new teddy bear like it was the most precious thing in the world, and she was coloring in a fresh coloring book with crayons that still smelled like the package. When Rachel saw Daniel approaching, she immediately stood up, the credit card already in her shaking hand. "I was going to return it," she said quickly, panic in her voice. "I promise I was. I just needed to get a few things first." "Keep it," Daniel said gently, raising both hands. "You still have hours left." Rachel's shoulders sagged with relief, so profound it looked like she might collapse. "I don't understand you." "That makes two of us," Daniel admitted. He looked at Lily, who was watching him with wide, curious brown eyes. "That's a nice bear. What's her name?" Lily hugged the toy tighter, shy but smiling. "Princess," she whispered. "That's a perfect name," Daniel said softly, his throat tight. He looked up at Rachel. "What else did you buy?" Rachel hesitated, then slowly pulled 2 crumpled receipts from her pocket and handed them over like evidence at a trial she was sure to lose. Daniel scanned the first receipt, and with every line, something inside his chest cracked a little more. Children's winter coat, size 7. Children's boots, waterproof. Socks, 5-pack. Children's underwear, pack of 6. Teddy bear. Coloring books. Crayons, 24-pack. Children's vitamins. Children's Tylenol. Band-aids. Antibiotic ointment. Every single item was for Lily. Not one thing for Rachel herself. The second receipt was from a grocery store. Bread. Peanut butter. Granola bars. Apples. Juice boxes. Crackers. String cheese. A gallon of milk. And at the bottom, something that made Daniel's breath catch in his throat. Roosevelt Shelter Donation Fund. $150. He looked up sharply. "You donated money?" Rachel's cheeks flushed red with embarrassment. "The shelter on Roosevelt. They've helped us when they could. They're always full. Always running out of supplies. I thought if I had extra, even just for one day, maybe I could help them help someone else." "Someone else?" Daniel repeated, his voice barely working. "You're homeless. You've been sleeping on concrete floors for 6 months, and you gave money to help other people?" "There are mothers there with babies," Rachel said quietly. "With teenagers. With disabilities. Some of them have it so much worse than we do. I know what it's like to need help and have nowhere to turn. If I could give back even a little, even for one day, I had to." Daniel stared at the receipts. His father's voice was completely silent now, obliterated by the truth printed on thermal paper. This woman, who had every reason to be selfish, who had every justification to think only of herself, had spent a billionaire's money on necessities, medicine, and charity. Not alcohol. Not designer clothes. Not jewelry or electronics or anything remotely self-indulgent. Just survival. Just kindness. Just love. You didn't buy anything for yourself, Daniel said, his voice strained with emotion he hadn't felt in years. Not a single thing. Rachel shook her head. Lily comes first. She always comes first. I can manage. I've managed this long. But she deserves better. She deserves to be warm, to be safe, to be a kid. Daniel looked at Lily, carefully coloring a picture of a butterfly, Princess the bear tucked under her arm. A child who'd spent 7 years learning that the world was cold and unstable, but who still smiled, still colored, still hoped. For the first time in his life, Daniel Wright felt genuinely small. Not in wealth, not in power, but in character, in humanity, in basic human decency. This homeless single mother had more grace in her roughened fingertips than he'd cultivated in 41 years of privilege. Come with me, he said suddenly, the words tumbling out before his brain could catch up. Rachel blinked. What? Both of you.
Come with me.
Please. Fear flickered in her eyes. Where? Somewhere warm, Daniel said, his voice breaking slightly. Somewhere safe. Somewhere you can finally stop running. Daniel took them to the Palmer house first. Not his penthouse, that felt too invasive, too overwhelming. Instead, he booked a 2-bedroom suite with tall windows overlooking the Chicago River. It had a full kitchen, a living room with furniture that looked like it belonged in magazines, and bathrooms with marble counters and towels so thick and white they looked like clouds. Rachel stood in the doorway, frozen. She couldn't cross the threshold. Her body simply wouldn't move. Don't forget to comment your views on this story and subscribe for more daily emotional stories. Red Heart. Let's continue. It's okay, Daniel said gently. This is yours for as long as you need it. No conditions. No expectations. Just safety. Lily, unburdened by adult disbelief and years of disappointment, ran inside immediately. Her new boots squeaked on the polished floor. She touched everything with wonder. The velvet couch, the heavy curtains, the bowl of fresh fruit on the counter that looked almost too perfect to be real. Mama, look, Lily called, pointing at the bathroom. There's a bathtub. A really, really big one. Rachel finally stepped inside, moving like someone walking through a dream that might shatter at any moment. She set down the plastic bag that held everything she owned, literally everything that remained of her previous life, and turned to Daniel with tears streaming down her face. I don't understand, she whispered. Why are you doing this? What do you want from us? Daniel had been asked that question 1,000 times in business. People always wanted to know his angle, his strategy, his hidden agenda. But standing there, watching a mother see safety for the first time in months, he realized he didn't have an agenda. He just had a choice. You reminded me what money is actually for, he said quietly. I'd forgotten. Or maybe I never knew. Rachel walked over to where Lily was pressing buttons on the TV remote, delighted by every channel that appeared. She knelt down and wrapped her arms around her daughter, holding her the way you hold something you thought you'd lost forever. You need to rest, Daniel said. Order room service. Take a real bath. Sleep in an actual bed. I'll come back tomorrow morning. We'll figure out the next steps then. Next steps? Rachel asked, confusion and fear mixing in her voice. Housing. Employment. School for Lily. Healthcare. Childcare. Stability. Daniel listed them like a business plan because that's what his brain did. It solved problems systematically. None of this has to be temporary unless you want it to be. Rachel stared at him like he'd just spoken a language she'd forgotten existed. You're serious? Completely. We're strangers. We're nobody. We're just two people who got unlucky and couldn't climb back out. You were nobody, Daniel corrected gently. Now you're someone I care about. Now you matter. Now you have someone who won't let you fall again. Rachel opened her mouth to argue, to protest, to explain all the reasons this couldn't be real. but exhaustion won. 6 months of hypervigilance and fear, and sleeping with one eye open came crashing down all at once. She sank onto the couch, her body folding like someone who'd been holding up the sky and could finally let it rest on something stronger. "Thank you," she whispered, and the words carried the weight of 6 months of suffering compressed into 2 syllables. Daniel nodded, his throat too tight to speak. "Get some rest, Rachel. You're safe now. Both of you." As he left the suite, he heard Lily's delighted laughter echoing behind him, and Daniel Wright realized he was smiling. Not the calculated, camera-ready smile he used in boardrooms and investor meetings, but something genuine. Something human. Something his face had almost forgotten how to do. That night, Daniel made phone calls. Not to lawyers or PR teams or financial advisors, but to people who actually helped. Social workers. Housing advocates. Job placement specialists. Education coordinators. He used his name not as a weapon, but as a key to open doors that had been slammed in Rachel's face for months. By morning, he had options. Real, tangible, sustainable options. He returned to the Palmer house at 9 o'clock, carrying coffee and a bag of fresh pastries from a bakery he thought Lily would love. When Rachel opened the door, she looked transformed. Not in appearance. She still wore the same worn clothes, but in the way she stood. Straighter. Like someone who'd remembered what it felt like to not be constantly afraid. Lily was drawing at the table, humming a song about butterflies. Princess sat proudly beside her, overseeing the artwork with a seriousness only a teddy bear could have. "Morning," Daniel said, handing Rachel the coffee. She took it with both hands, inhaling the steam like a memory she'd thought was lost forever. Real coffee from an actual coffee shop. I forgot what that was like. They sat together while Lily colored, and Daniel laid out the plan. A 2-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood near good schools. Job training programs matched to her skills. She'd been a dental hygienist before everything fell apart. Healthcare coverage. Lily enrolled in 2nd grade at a public school with excellent ratings and an after-school program. Everything thought through. Everything possible. Rachel listened in stunned silence, tears running down her face, dripping into coffee that had grown cold while Daniel talked. "This isn't charity," Daniel clarified, echoing what he'd been telling himself all night. "It's an investment. You're intelligent, capable, and resilient. You just need a foundation to rebuild from. A place to stand so you can start climbing again." "I don't know how to repay you," Rachel said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You already did," Daniel replied. "You showed me that goodness still exists in people. That desperation doesn't automatically create monsters. That my father was wrong about everything that actually matters." Rachel shook her head, more tears falling. "I just bought what Lily needed." "Exactly," Daniel said. "You had unlimited wealth for 24 hours, and you chose love over greed. Do you have any idea how rare that is? How many people would have drained that card buying things for themselves and walked away without looking back?" Rachel looked at her daughter, carefully coloring inside the lines of a flower, her small tongue poking out in concentration. "She's all I have. She's all that matters. Everything I do, every choice I make, it's all for her." "I know," Daniel said softly. "I saw it in those receipts. I saw it in that donation to the shelter. You could have taken everything, but you gave anyway. That's not just good. That's extraordinary." For weeks later, Rachel and Lily moved into their new apartment. It was on the 3rd floor of a clean, quiet building in Rogers Park. Not luxury, laminate counters, carpet from a catalog, fixtures that came standard with the lease, but it was theirs. Walls that didn't move. A door that locked from the inside. Heat that worked. Windows that let in light without letting in wind. Daniel helped them move in, carrying boxes, assembling furniture from IKEA, laughing when Lily insisted on supervising by placing Princess on every flat surface and declaring it decorated. "She's very particular about interior design," Rachel joked, watching her daughter arrange stuffed animals with the seriousness of an architect. Daniel didn't mind. For the first time in years, he felt useful. Not powerful. Not influential. Not wealthy. Just useful. Just present. Just human. That evening, After Lily fell asleep in her new bed, her very first bed that wasn't a couch or a floor or someone else's charity, Rachel and Lily stood in the small living room, exhaustion and gratitude hanging thick between them. "I start the dental hygiene refresher course on Monday," Rachel said. 8 weeks, then I can take my licensing exam again. After that, it's stable work, good benefits, a real career path. "You're going to be incredible at it," Daniel said, and he meant it. Rachel looked around the apartment, her eyes glistening in the lamplight. "I keep waiting to wake up back at the station, to realize this was all some elaborate dream I had while freezing on concrete." "It's real," Daniel assured her. "It's yours. No one can take it away." She turned to face him, her voice breaking around the edges. "Why did you choose us? Out of all the people you could have helped, out of everyone in this city who's struggling, why me and Lily?" Daniel had thought about that question every day since that morning at Union Station. He'd analyzed it like a business decision, broken it down into logical components. But the truth was simpler and more complicated than logic. "Because you looked at your daughter the way my mother used to look at me," he said quietly, "before she died. Before my father turned cold and bitter and taught me that trust was weakness. You looked at Lily like nothing else in the world existed, like you'd burn down the universe to keep her safe. And I realized I'd spent 41 years believing people like you didn't exist anymore." Rachel wiped her eyes. "You gave us a future." "No," Daniel said. "You already had a future. I just helped you reach it. You did the hard part. You survived. You kept Lily safe. You stayed good when the world gave you every reason to be bitter. That's all you. I just removed some obstacles." Rachel smiled through tears. "You're different than I expected. When I first saw you at the station in your expensive coat with your expensive briefcase, I thought you'd be cold, maybe cruel, indifferent at best." "I was all of those things," Daniel admitted. "You changed that. You and Lily. You reminded me that wealth is worthless if it doesn't multiply meaning." Before the story continues, subscribe. These stories are written to change lives. They stood in comfortable silence, the apartment settling around them with creaks and hums that sounded like peace. Lily's soft breathing drifted from the bedroom. Traffic hummed distantly outside. The radiator clicked on, flooding the space with warmth. For the first time in 6 months, Rachel looked relaxed. And for the first time in 41 years, Daniel felt like his life had actual purpose. Months passed like turning pages in a book. Rachel completed her refresher course with honors, landed a position at a dental clinic in Lincoln Park with full benefits and regular hours. Lily thrived in 2nd grade, making friends, bringing home artwork, no longer carrying the weight of homelessness in her small shoulders. Daniel visited often, not as a benefactor checking on an investment, but as a friend. Someone who attended Lily's school talent show where she sang "Somewhere Over the Rainbow," off-key, but with complete confidence. Someone who helped Rachel navigate apartment maintenance when the dishwasher started leaking. Someone who showed up on difficult days and didn't need to be asked. He learned things about himself he'd never known. That he liked cooking simple meals more than expensive restaurants. That children's laughter was better than board meeting applause. That watching someone rebuild their life was more satisfying than watching his stock portfolio grow. One evening, sitting on Rachel's modest couch, while Lily showed him her science project about monarch butterflies, Rachel handed him something. His credit card. "I kept it," she admitted, blushing. "I know I should have given it back weeks ago, but I was scared. Scared that if I returned it, all of this would disappear. That it was only real as long as I held on to that piece of plastic." Daniel smiled, closing her fingers back around the card. "Keep it." "I can't. Emergency fund," he said simply. "For Lily. For unexpected expenses. For peace of mind. You've proven exactly what you do with it. You've proven I can trust you more than I trust most people I've known for decades." Rachel stared at the card, then at him. "You really mean that?" "Completely." She wiped her eyes, laughing through tears. "You're the strangest billionaire I've ever met." "How many billionaires have you met?" Daniel teased. "Just you," Rachel admitted. "But I'm pretty sure you're the strange one. Good, Daniel said. I'd hate to be predictable. 2 years later, Daniel stood at a podium in front of hundreds of people. Investors, journalists, philanthropists, politicians, tech industry leaders, people who'd flown in from 3 continents to hear what he had to say. He was announcing something new, something that would have made his father turn in his grave. The right foundation for family support. Comprehensive support for single parents facing homelessness. Emergency housing. Job training. Childcare. Healthcare. Education support. No applications. No bureaucracy. No degrading processes that made people prove they deserved help. Just help extended with dignity to people who'd been failed by every other system. And sitting in the front row, wearing a simple blue dress she'd bought with her own paycheck, holding Lily's hand, was Rachel Torres. No longer homeless. No longer desperate. No longer invisible. Just a mother who'd survived hell and found her footing on the other side. Daniel caught her eye during the speech and she smiled. The kind of smile that said everything words couldn't. Gratitude.
Pride.
Friendship.
Hope.
He thought about that December morning at Union Station. About a credit card extended like a test. About his father's warnings that the desperate would destroy him. But his father had been wrong about everything. The desperate weren't dangerous. They were human, capable of extraordinary love, remarkable resilience, and stunning generosity when given the smallest opportunity. Rachel Torres had taught him that. Had shattered his assumptions with receipts for children's coats and shelter donations. Had broken his heart open in the best possible way. After the press conference, reporters swarmed with questions. But Daniel only cared about 2 people. He found Rachel and Lily outside near the fountain in front of the building. You did it, Rachel said, tears streaming down her face. You're really doing this. You're going to help so many families. We're doing this, Daniel corrected. I want you on the foundation board. I want your voice, your perspective, your experience. I need someone who's been there. Someone who understands what it's really like. Rachel looked shocked. Me? On a board? Daniel, I don't have any experience with. You have the only experience that matters, Daniel interrupted. You survived. You stayed good. You know exactly what families need because you needed it. You're perfect for this. Lily tugged on Daniel's sleeve. Mr. Daniel, does this mean more people will get homes like we did? Daniel knelt down to her level. Now 9 years old. Thriving. No longer the frightened child sleeping on subway floors. Yes, sweetheart. Lots of families. Because your mom reminded me what helping actually means. Lily smiled, then wrapped her arms around his neck in a fierce hug. You're like family now. Right, Mama? Rachel wiped her eyes, nodding. Right, baby. He's family. Daniel felt something crack open in his chest. Something that had been frozen solid for 3 decades. His father had taught him that trust was weakness. That kindness was naive. That the poor would destroy him. But Rachel had taught him something different. Something true. That wealth without compassion is just numbers on a screen. That power without purpose is just noise in an empty room. That the richest thing a person can own isn't money or property or stock portfolios. It's the ability to look someone in the eyes and say, I see you. You matter. I'll help you stand. As they walked through Chicago together, a tech billionaire, a single mother, and a little girl clutching a worn teddy bear, Daniel realized he'd finally found what he'd been searching for his entire life. Not more money. Not more power. Not more control. Just meaning. Just purpose. Just the knowledge that his existence made someone else's life better. Rachel had given him that. Had broken his heart wide open with kindness and survival and love. And he would spend the rest of his life grateful that one freezing December morning, he'd stopped walking. That he'd looked poverty in the face and found humanity staring back. The test he designed for Rachel had actually been a test for himself. And he'd finally, miraculously, passed. Because here's what Daniel learned and what I hope you'll remember. The world will tell you to protect yourself first. To trust no one. To assume the worst in people, especially those who have nothing left to lose. But sometimes, the the people with the least give the most. Sometimes, desperation doesn't make thieves, it reveals heroes. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is extend your hand to someone who's falling and trust that they won't pull you down, but rather, remind you what it means to be human. Rachel Torres didn't just change Daniel Wright's life that December morning. She changed his heart. And in doing so, she changed the lives of thousands of families who would never know her name, but would forever benefit from the lesson she taught a billionaire who'd forgotten how to trust. That in the end, we're all just people. Some of us are lucky. Some of us aren't. But we all deserve dignity. We all deserve a chance. We all deserve someone who looks at us and sees not what we lack, but what we're capable of becoming. That's the real test. Not what we do with unlimited money, but what we do with unlimited compassion. Thanks for your watching. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe to the Story Room for meaningful stories that inspire and teach life lessons.